I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:30, and this is the work session meeting for the City of Minnetrista City Council, November 9th. First order of business, I'm going to add one item to our agenda this evening, and I'm going to add at the end of our agenda a closed session with our attorney. This will be attorney-client privilege. I think you all got the note late this afternoon. With that, I don't have any other agenda items. Is there a motion then to make that change to the agenda, or to actually then approve the agenda with that change?
So moved. This is Pam.
All right, Pam made that motion. Is there a second?
This is Mike. I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Molitor made that second. All those in favor will signify with aye. I, Lisa Whalen, say yes. Pam Mortensen?
Aye.
And Mike Molitor?
Aye.
John Trumperlin?
Aye.
Shannon Bruce?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Hold on.
Okay.
I have to do a roll call. So with that, I'm going to do a roll call so we know that Pam Mortensen, Mike Molitor, John Trumperlin, Shannon Bruce, and myself, Lisa Whalen, are here. They've already weighed in. And then we have with us this evening also Mike Baroni, our city administrator.
Here.
Just say aye. Okay, thank you. Our finance director, Brian Grimm.
Aye.
And David Abel, our community development director.
Aye.
Ali Paulfos, admin administrator. Sorry, I always get yours wrong.
That's okay. I'm here.
Okay, and Chris Lindquist, our city clerk.
Present.
And we have Gary Peters, Public Works Superintendent.
Here.
And then we have City Engineer Adam Gadbois is here as well.
Here. Yes.
All right. I think that's everybody then. So we'll move on. I'm going to hand it right over. So we're going to conclude our work session at 6:15. At that point, then we will get out of this meeting, and we will then dial in dial in for the next meeting at 6:15 with our attorney. So, Mr. Grimm, I'm going to hand it over to you right away.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So I'll try to talk fast, seeing I lost 15 minutes, but that's okay. Probably not the first time, won't be the last, and it happens to me at home too. So we'll start with the the Park Dedication Fund budget. And this one, I think I'll start off with, but I think I'm going to lean on David and Gary, and as well as to answer any questions of the council, seeing they're the ones that would be just more knowledgeable about the parks as far as what's all in them and working with the park commission, etc. So you have in the packet is a few different documents, starting on page 2 with just the memo there. Page 3 shows the trend history of the Park Dedication Fund. You can see going back to 2014 and some of the different items that has been done over the last several years. The tennis courts in Lyle Park, the Lyle Park parking lot, as well as some other items there too that's been done previously. And then you can see, and if you move ahead to the 2020 predicted year end, the Lyle Park picnic shelter is in progress, and that has not been paid out yet, obviously, until that's done. But that was the budgeted item for 2020. And then what went to the Park Commission and at their meeting earlier this month was the recommendation to do Jennings Park, the updates there. And I don't know if maybe David and Gary, if this is a good time for them to jump in and talk about that, or before that's sort of just recap the spreadsheet there, I mean, you'll see the fund balance has sort of been, between that $800,000 and $900,000 amount the last several years. So that's about where it's been based on park dedication revenue coming in and expenditures going out. But yeah, I don't know if Gary or David want to jump in and talk a little bit about the 2021 projected or at least recommended park project.
David,
Go ahead, David.
we'll start with you.
Not much to add. I guess in terms of the park condition and such, I'll lean on Gary. The Parks Commission did review this. They did recommend this item as well. As we've stated for a number of years now, that we have a number of parks that are up there and aging, and so that's why we kind of rely on Gary to tell us which ones, in worse shape, and therefore hence we brought this one forward. So as we've suggested in years past, instead of having all of these parks, needing upgrading at once, is to start picking away at them, one every other year, or however you want to do it, but just start the process of updating the parks. And go ahead on the condition of the park, if you would, Gary.
Yeah, the park itself it's getting 20 plus years old. A lot of deterioration in the coating that is on the metal. Basically, it's the rubber coated metal areas. A lot of it's starting to rust through. A lot of the playground equipment it will not pass. We're grandfathered in to a point, but a lot of it won't pass new standards set forth. The swings are no longer quote unquote set to standards, so it is time to upgrade that. I mean, the nice thing is there's a ton of kids that use it every time we go by there to do work. There is a lot of kids there. It would take a little bit of work to combine the two. There's a separate swing area as well as a separate playground area. We'd probably make it a one big area. There are a couple of mature green ash trees in there, which on some berms that look terrible, with some really overgrown junipers, really looks terrible. I mean, most of that would come out of there. We'd probably remove the ash trees. It would be just a matter of time before they go anyways due to the emerald ash borer. So if we're going to do it, we do it now. Come up with a design that would incorporate some new trees, whether it be, oaks or some maples or elms or hackberry or something like that. And they're along with the new playground system. The basketball court, the fence would probably be replaced. Along with the surface area, it has a plastic kind of a surface on it now, like a tile system. Don't know why that got put on, but if we're going to do it, we could probably just strip the whole thing off and repaint it like we've done on the other ones. Put in there stripe it for basketball, but also put on for pickleball, because that seems to be what everybody wants. They're used tons for pickleball, so it's desperately needs it here. I mean, like I say, this one and Friendship are probably and Linden are probably our three top parks that we see so many kids at.
Okay. So Gary, you were talking about removing the ash trees and stuff. Is it possible to maybe remove one of the ash trees now and then replant a nice size maple or oak, and then later on, as that oak or maple is a little bit larger, then we remove the other ash? I think there's 2 ash trees or whatever. Maybe remove some of them now so we don't end up with this really bare look and no shade area. See, that's the other thing I'm thinking of. And then the other thing is, couldn't we use also some of our tree preservation money for some of the trees and landscaping here?
Yeah, you probably could do
Go
that.
ahead.
With the tree, it's pretty much going to be, you have to remove at least one because it's in between all the playground area. And the other ones, I mean, you'd probably be looking at 2 to 3 that would get removed at this time. Not all of them, just the ones around that playground area and on the berm. Be 2 to 3. The whole rest of the park, they would stay. We've already replanted a few maples in there. I would recommend probably planting a few more different breeds in there, whether it be some Discovery elms, a couple of hackberries or something like that, in combination on the around the pond area there. But with the general plan of the park, we could always incorporate a sunshade over like a seating area, There's a lot of stuff that would be open to that. I mean, it definitely would have to be thought out. Trees could be added at that point too to come back. I mean, spading in a large tree, there's no irrigation out there, so we'd be looking at watering these on a regular basis ourselves to get them started. So I mean, there's a little bit of work out there to do that, especially with a larger tree. It might take a little bit longer to get it going, where a smaller tree, it's not so bad. So, but just looking at the lay of it, I mean, if you're going to do it now. The berms are so beat up and they look horrible. I mean, it would just be a much more presentable park.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else have comments or questions?
This is Shannon.
Shannon, go ahead.
My question is what's before the council tonight for the Parks Fund for $150,000? That doesn't include the tree removal or replacement, does it?
Gary?
Yeah, I was going to defer to Gary.
I would assume that would be in there too, be part of the whole design and stuff. So I think that would cover all the earthwork that we'd have to do in there, and depending on, it all kind of depends too on how big a playground we want to put in, what we want to incorporate. I mean, are we going to do a tot lot with a medium playground with swings, or just a medium playground with swings? I mean, it all kind of weighs into it, with the dirt work, but I mean, I would think that would all be incorporated into that money.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I'm looking at what the council was given, and it doesn't mention anything about tree replacement.
Is that part of the park redesign, Gary?
Yeah, it would all be incorporated in there. I mean, we just kind of set a preliminary number, in there, and that's hard to describe. Depending on what we want to put in there, it's going to be the big factor, But
okay, I just wanted to know if that's inclusive of the 150 or not, and it sounds like it is.
I would think 50,000 would cover the whole dirt, the site work, the dirt work, and all that. It's minimal. I mean, it's flat. It's not too bad. I mean, it would assume that would incorporate all the tree. Tree removal is not that expensive. Tree planting wouldn't be that bad, so it would incorporate all that, I'm assuming.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Mayor and Council, if I may, this is David. I mean, to Gary's point, I mean, we haven't put this out for bid. We've had general conversations with park vendors about general cost, and it all depends upon how many trees you take out, how many you're going to put in, what's the park design. What we're looking for from council is what number are you comfortable with, and if it's $150,000, then that's what it's going to cost. It's going to be $150,000, and if you got to do one less tree or a couple less trees, it is what it is.
Yep.
Well, again, David, I think what we should do is figure out how much money it's going to cost for trees, removal of trees as well as replanting trees. And I think that could come out of our tree replacement or our environmental enhancement fund. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But with that said, I agree. It's basically tonight kind of giving a high level, okay, if you will, of 150,000, somewhere in that range for rejuvenating this park. Gary,
this is Pam. I have a quick question. Yeah. On the maintenance schedule for Jennings Park, it's got the trail, mill, and overlay slated for 2021. Is that, and there's no cost behind that line?
Yeah, I mean, I would not know what that would cost to do at this point. I mean, we could throw a number out there, and call it, 15,000. Again, without bidding it at this point, it's tough to throw a number at this stuff. But that we probably would almost wait with that, or incorporate it into that 150,000, or we would take and incorporate it into when the Jennings Cove gets redone. That part of the trail system is more of an area around the west side, towards the south and west side. It doesn't really interfere with anything in the park itself, so we could leave that there for now, work around that, and then when they redo the road, we could look at redoing the trail at that time, that portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there a way you could get at least an estimate for that, so we could look at a number? These playgrounds, we haven't done these 20, 30 years, so I think when we do them, we should really do them right. obviously, because we don't want to come back around in 10 years. I mean, these last a long time.
Right, and that would not be an issue. I guess I don't know what the purpose of that short trail was to begin with. I mean, it really doesn't serve a purpose. It doesn't go anywhere. So I don't know if it was parking. I mean, it was before my time and before David's time. Not really sure the school of thought behind that, why it's not just grass in there for more area. I mean, because people can park on the street there. There's plenty of street parking. So maybe even gets eliminated, I don't know. I mean, it's something to think about. But yeah, we can get a number to, to remove and replace, so that's not a problem.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. This is Mike. Couple of things I want to add on here. As long as we're talking about the trail, I think a couple things. Either if we redo it, and that could be done when we redo the streets, as Gary mentioned. But what happens with the trail, as Gary mentioned, on the west side of that park, is it's adjacent to the street, pretty much like a sidewalk. But then once you get to about where the tennis courts are, it starts to meander through the park, probably, 100 feet maybe, and really doesn't have much of a purpose there either. So I would say if we're going to redo the trail, to make it go all the way around the park on the perimeter like the street, basically extend to the east what it does on the west, or get rid of it entirely and not have a trail within the park. Because right now the trail that goes actually through the park system is kind of worthless, and it's just a maintenance issue. So I think we need to, as part of this, look at the design of that and either make it consistent and make it around the radius of the park, or maybe just get rid of it entirely. But I think this would be a good time to do that, because it doesn't. I mean, I've walked on it, and it's kind of nice to be off the street, but to Gary's point, it doesn't really lead you to much of anywhere.
Okay.
One of the other questions I had, and I posed this to Mike earlier today, is if you're looking at the picture on page 6 of our packet, or if you're familiar with the area, the left side is the stormwater retention pond, and I want to get some information about what the status of that is that if that needs to be remediated, and I believe that's a city-owned pond, this is a pretty tight space. This might, if we're going to go in there and do dirt work with the playground, this might be a good time to address that if it's necessary. And so I'm hoping that I think maybe David or perhaps Adam has an update. Can you maybe speak to that, please?
Yeah, I can speak to that. David had asked me to look into that today. The pond, the swamp score, as you guys are all familiar with, the swamp score on that pond is actually pretty high. It's 85. So there's no recommended cleaning at this time. And we were able to look at the historical cleaning schedule on that, and it was cleaned out in 2010. So we don't think,
okay.
I think it's absolutely a great question. That one's in good shape and probably don't need to incorporate any pond work with the park work.
Okay, good to hear. The other question that I have, and it's not directly related to this one, but if you go to the other information on the parks, if we go to the Woods of Saga Hill, which is, let me find the page packet, is page 11. We had in the next year, 2022, we had a trail mill and overlay scheduled for that. And that's a relatively short trail as well. What I was thinking is that trail is literally right across the street from the trail we were talking about at the last meeting that connects Grandview to Minneapolis Avenue. And if we were thinking about redoing that trail between those two streets, it might make sense to do this trail at the same time in 2021, because a contractor could get a bigger job out of that, do the whole thing at one time. So I would think, we obviously would have to get some bids on that, but I would think that'd be relatively small enough that we could, from a financial perspective, include that in one shot and get that knocked out. So I'd like to at least put that out there to see if there's any appetite for doing that, since it's right in the same area.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, Mike. the thing is that both the trail that connects Grandview to Minneapolis Avenue, as well as that little trail that connects Minneapolis to Bayside, those really should be paid for out of our park dedication fund as well. And I didn't see that in our budget, so we should add something in the budget for that, and maybe even consider doing something here. But we'd have to look at this trail first to see if a mill and over, well, it says here 22 mill and overlays, so then it would just be moving it up by one year, which would make a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay.
That's my point.
All right. Anybody else?
This is John T. Kind of in hand with what Mike touched on. My question is more general. The trail mill and overlay, besides the one that was listed, the trail that's around Jennings for 2021. Looking through the park listing, I see Lyle Park was also listed for having a mill trail and overlay. And then in 2022, there was actually 4 listed. So my general question is, how do we approach them if there's 4 of them, like potential for next year? I know they're just subjective at this stage, but if there's 4 of them and we decide to do 4 of them, are they somehow worked into whatever our road projects would be so the vendor can do them as well? Or is there any set procedure for this?
I'll let Adam answer that. The only thing, and I was talking to Allison about this, the only difference is they have to use different equipment to do these trails because of the size of the width of the trails. So sometimes there isn't necessarily a cost savings to do the trails at the same time you do your roads. But for the Grandview and Minneapolis, for those trails there, it makes sense to do them now. But I'll let Adam maybe weigh in on this. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Willen. John, can you repeat the question and clarify what you were asking?
But just a clarification. I'm looking through all the parks and the projected work to be done at them next year as well into the future. There were 2 trail and overlays this next year, supposedly one at Jennings and one at the Lyle. And then in 2022, there's 4 more parks that had as part of their maintenance schedule a trail, mill, and overlay. And I was wondering if, I know it's maybe specialized equipment, but is that something that we would typically, or not typically, is that something we would try to incorporate with our road maintenance vendor, or is it something that we're dealing with specialized and it's done by somebody else?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, perfect question. As the mayor alluded to, it is a little slightly different equipment, but when we are tearing up a corridor and redoing it, the contractor's there with some of that equipment at least in it, and definitely the personnel who do that work. So there can be a cost savings. On the other side, the Gary Peters, Allison, myself, and some other folks likely are starting to plan and talk more about these trails. And I think what you'll see is a plan to do a bigger trail improvement, or hopefully do a bigger trail improvement all at once and take care of these with that trail contractor and do it in different areas of the city to really have cost savings in terms of, you've got your trail paver, which is a little bit smaller equipment, and whatever the equipment they need to remove it. So there's a lot of ways to do it.
If I may jump in, it's Gary. The other thing to consider too is with some of these, there's some other contractors that specialize in, more like driveways and trails and stuff like that. And they do have the smaller pavers and they're more equipped for it. So we might be better off, like Adam said, quoting out as one package to do that. The Plea Halls, the Jones Brothers Blacktopping, Dunsmore Asphalts. The smaller contractors might give you a better price because they're better equipped for it. They don't have to, they have the paver already. They're not going to go out and look for your Muellers, your BRs, the bigger ones all have the big pavers. They're looking to make the most bang for their buck with their big money. I mean, yes, they would bring in smaller pavers, but you might have better luck bidding it out with a different company.
Thanks, and I think this is good discussion. That's why I was asking, because I didn't know if it fit the normal road maintenance. And so if we can look at all those trails, and again, there's 2 of them listed for this year and 4 of them hypothetically for next year. If we look at the trails at all the parks from that perspective, that we can bid them at once, that would be something I think that would be better.
Okay. All right.
So what's the timing on getting together a plan?
We
on
can.
that?
Well, here's the thing we could do. We could approve the 150 for Jennings Cove. We can always amend the budget. So if they bring back this, a proposal, let's even say next meeting, and they say, here's what we're going to recommend for doing all these trails, as John had mentioned. These are the ones we're going to recommend. We're estimating this amount. We can always amend a budget, especially because this doesn't. This will come out of our park dedication funds, so it's not like we're levying for it. So it's a little less imminent that we have to make that decision.
No, I get that. I just want to make sure it's not. I guess my point is if we decide to do that, we don't even have to do that in 2021. We could do it in 2022. But I just want to make sure that have a plan that kind of march toward that, and as when we do, we can start updating our budget to reflect our intentions. And whether that's a 2021 budget or maybe a 2022, it might be more appropriate in 2022. And I'm fine with doing it all as a lump sum. I'm just so that we get it addressed.
Right, and so we have a time frame attached to it. Well, staff, what do you think? When could you bring this back? I'll ask Gary and Adam.
Adam, what do you think? We could probably get something together in a couple weeks, couldn't we? A rough plan.
Certainly. We have that list. Gary was on top of this, has been on top of this, and has a great list already started. So it's a matter of throwing some cost estimates together for that list, and we can present it in certain packages or all at once, and give the council and other staff some idea of what the cost would be. So December 7th is the next meeting, right? So it gives us a few weeks. So I think that we could bring up.
I think you have 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I think you have 3 weeks.
Yeah. I think that we could have something by the 7th.
Okay, sounds good.
You have 4 weeks.
4 weeks. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Even better.
All right. So plenty of time, right? All right.
5.
Are we okay with that?
This is Pam. I think that's a great plan.
Just
Pam,
one
you're
point
okay
of
with that?
clarification.
Sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Does that
Mike?
Then that would include Jennings as well? That we would kind of have that trail component as part of that discussion at that point?
I think we should, whether we keep the trail or eliminate the trail. And we'll have, maybe we can, in the meantime, take a look at it, see what staff thinks. Maybe council can go out and take a look at it as well, so we have a better visual on it too. So yeah, we'll add that into that mix as well. Okay? All right. John and Pam and Shannon, you're all on board?
That's fine.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I did have one more. This is John. I have one more question of Brian. I asked Brian this morning, there was a projection again in all the parks of doing all the playground equipment, replacing, et cetera, rubber mulch, et cetera, in 2022 at Friendship and 23 at Leonard. And I was wondering, and I know the numbers would be subjective, but I was just curious, based on us having the spreadsheet here out to 2023, is there a possibility of knowing what that projection? If we're projecting 150,000 here this year for Jennings, then if we're talking 150 in 2022 and 150 in 2023, which would certainly affect the fund balance. So I was wondering, Brian, did you have numbers?
Yeah, Councilmember Shumperlin and rest of the council. Yeah, for when I talked with David and Gary, it sounded like for Friendship Park 2022, a rough estimate would be about 100,000. And then for G Linear Park, I don't know if people remember this one a little bit, but that one was going to be pushing more upwards of 300,000 because a lot of the ADA issues. I think this was one of the ones we had discussed in the last, maybe it was even the last cycle, and then we pivoted and went to the Lyle Park shelter, just knowing that the Gene Lanier Park went from being a $150,000 park to a $250,000, $300,000 with some of the ADA requirements.
Thanks. And that was my concern. That's what I remembered about that park, that it had to be ADA addressed. And so our fund balance conceivably going out a couple of years will drop substantially. I just wanted a comfort level on that. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. All right. Brian, we'll move on now then to the second item, and I think that is the discussion on the recycling.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Council. Oh.
We don't really need to talk a whole lot about our environmental enhancement fund balance, do we?
Madam Mayor, that's on page 40, and really we don't have anything really projected as far as any real targeted tree planting. I mean, I think to follow up on the point earlier, once Gary and David have a little better feel on the Jennings Park project, and maybe if it's 5, 10, 15,000 worth of tree remove, I'm hypothetically, I guess they would have to know better once they talk with vendors and stuff, but this would be a place obviously where it would be spent here versus the park dedication fund if it's tree replacement and planting related.
Okay, all right. Anybody else have questions on that? Otherwise, we'll move on to the recycling fund budget. Brian, I think that's you.
Yep, so that's on, starts on page 41 of the packet, and it's piggybacks, I guess, or follows up, and I know we had a discussion on this back in, I want to say early May, that time frame as far as with the waste management contract. So what I did, and as I think these, at least this spreadsheet, this format was shown at that time as far as starting on page 42, the cost of the contract in a monthly, quarterly, and annual laid out, and then based on our number of households now and projected out and then what our costs would be on the contract, and then seeing knowing that our basic our contract rate went from $350 a month when the recycling market was good 5 years ago or so, and we locked into that contract, to $495 a month now. I know we had talked about trying to do some phased in rate adjustments to the fund and scheduling that out as far as not jumping it, the quarterly charge from $9.50 to like $15, but to try to bump it, whether it's $11, $12, so to get it up towards where the cost of the contract is over time. So I ran a couple of different options on page 42 and 43, which basically the main difference is starting at moving it from $9.50, which it's been at about for, I haven't seen the rate change since 2005. So if you look at it, in 15 years, the recycling rate hasn't changed that we charge to our custom residents, through the utility rate. So the one spreadsheet has it going from 11, 12, 13.50, etc. as a projected. And obviously we look at the rates every year. So all we're really looking for right now is to what to do for 2021. And then the second option was more of a 12, 13, 14.50, that type of extrapolation out there. So maybe I'll just open it up to the council for questions or comments, seeing we have about 10 minutes left here, but wanted to see where everyone's was at as far as our 2021 utility rate would be the biggest and most imminent item, with adopting our fee schedule usually at that first meeting in December here, I guess our next meeting.
All right. Anybody want to go first? Volunteers? I'll start with John. Okay, Mike Molitor, go ahead.
If our discussion here is between option 1 and 2, I would lean towards option 1. A couple of reasons. As Brian pointed out, our rate has been flat for a number of years, and I don't want to go from, I think it's 950. I don't want to go from 950 to 12 right away. It'd be nice to kind of do a little bit more gradual as what is presented in option 1. And given that our fund balance will afford us to do that, I think that's a little bit more palatable. The second option is probably a little bit more aggressive than what it needs to be. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Mr. Chumberlain.
That was my preference. I didn't want to have sticker shock, even though it's been $9.50 for eons. The average consumer, myself included, doesn't really recognize that. It's just a quarterly thing you do, and so recognizing that it changed, I don't want it changing a great deal. The problem I might have, and it's not this year, would be next year, is go with option 1, but I certainly wouldn't guarantee that. Then, to me, that means it's only 12 next year. We have to look at it each year as we do, and maybe we adjust again next year to something other than this pro rata sheet here. So option 1 for me as well.
Okay. Ms. Bruce?
Excuse me. I'm thinking about the year 2026 and what the quarterly cost is going to be in 2026. Because right now in 2025, it's projected to be $1737 in option 1. And if we don't competitively bid these contracts, that could go up pretty high. So I'm obviously I would vote for option 1 because it's lower, and I don't think our residents are going to like having to pay more than $11. But I would hope that when this contract comes up for renewal in 2026, that we competitively bid it so that we can keep those costs closer to the $17 or the $16.50 that our residents are going to be paying in 2025.
Okay. Pam?
I prefer option 1 as well. So just a real quick question. For the ending cash balance, is there a level that we feel that we need to get nervous, about getting to a point of being low?
How about 0?
Well, I'm just looking, for like 2025, we end up being, it looks like $62,000. Is that a comfort level?
I think that would be, I guess the way I would look at it is in every fund's different. Like the general fund, we have our, fund balance policy there. The enterprise funds, utility funds are always a little harder, but I guess we'd have 6, if this obviously all played out, perfectly as is, we'd have an estimated 66,000 towards the end of 2025. And our cost of our contract basically we'd be paying our vendor Waste Management at 233,000. So we'd have, I don't even know what that is, 20% or 20, or so, or 25%. So I'm okay with that way that projects out. And if it started to get lower than 50, 60,000, maybe then I'd be a little more worried, I guess.
Okay, well that answers my question. And again, I prefer option 1.
All right, so I prefer option 1 for a number of reasons, and I agree with John. We are going to be looking at this every year. So these are projections, and I'm looking at it, and it looks like we're adding 75 homes a year. And I think we're probably, if this trend continues that has been continuing for the past 5 years, we're probably going to see closer to 100 versus 75 homes. So that's going to change these projections a little bit. In addition to that, I don't think we should be carrying a huge fund balance. I think a $30,000 to $50,000 fund balance in this fund is more than adequate, because eventually what should happen is we should be charging our residents what the cost of recycling is, and we shouldn't have to be carrying these large, huge fund balances for that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So I think a small token, if you will, increase every year is better than a big jump. So I'm also in favor of option number 1. So, Brian, anything else?
No, I think that's good. I think that's good feedback from the council. So I think when we bring the budget and then incorporate the amounts into the fee schedule, what we'll do is bring the $11 per quarter as the amount to charge for recycling starting in 2021. So.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. What we're going to do then is we're actually not going to be adjourning this meeting. We're simply going to be dialing into the closed session. And then after the closed session, then Mike Brony, can you tell me, do we need to come back to this meeting to adjourn?
No, I think you can adjourn in the next meeting. We just have to get to the next meeting. This one is being recorded. The closed session will not be. So,
all right.
Just adjourn it. We'll just reflect that in the minutes. I mean, that's just part and parcel of being in a pandemic when you got to do things like this with virtual meetings. So.
All right. So again, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mike Brony. We're not going to adjourn this meeting, right?
Correct. We are not adjourning.
All right. All right. Thank you.
We're just leaving this particular go-to meeting and going to the other one.
All right. So we will talk to all of you in about 3 minutes. Talk to you then.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to read what Mayor Whalen should have read, but that's where it goes. It's okay. So the information I have to read is we are now going into a closed session for attorney-client privilege discussion pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05 Subdivision 3B to discuss threatened litigation by Evan Carlson, applicant for the pending site plan application for a ground-mounted solar energy system at PID number 20-117-24-22-0002. Our attorneys from Kennedy and Graven will be present to discuss the applicant's threatened litigation, which stems from the direction that was provided by the council at its October 19th, 2020 meeting. The need for confidentiality in discussing the threatened litigation outweighs the purpose of the open meeting law because our legal counsel intends to candidly discuss strategy and the merits of the applicant's legal arguments. So Lisa, that's what you read?
Yes, thank you.
And if you want to call a motion.
Okay, is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Okay, a motion has been made by Ms. Bruce. Is there a second?
John T. L. second.
Okay, and John made that second. Now, all those in favor will signify with aye. I, Lisa Whalen, say yes. Ms. Bruce?
Aye.
Mr. Chamberlain?
Aye.
Ms. Let's see, Mike Molitor?
Aye.
And Pam, are you here?
I'm here. Aye.
Okay, aye. That's 5-0. So we are now going into closed session. Chris,
Okay, so
are we good?
We are good, and Mike.
All right. So we are back at our regular work session, and we've concluded our closed meeting. And with that, we have no further business, so we can be adjourned. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Bruce made that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second Pam.
All right, Pam seconded that, and all those in favor will signify with aye. Pam, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Shannon?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Mike?
Aye.
And I'm Lisa. I vote aye. Motion passes 5-0. So we are adjourned, and we will be back at our regular meeting in about 1 minute or so. See you then.